This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Prime.
Over the last 1 year, we've also been riding the startup wave, as it were, being a part of the journey of so many entrepreneurs. We've looked at the big companies, the bigger valuations, the big success stories, some of the failures, the learnings, the lessons, and so on, and of course celebrated the mega successes. But it's time now to perhaps take a step back, and 2016, they're saying, is when things will perhaps be a bit of a squeeze for this community. So perhaps the best time, like I said, to step back and look at the other side that isn't often very reported, where people talk about the stress that is involved, the tension, the work-life balance, and the challenges that go with setting up your own company or even being a part of someone else's dream and journey. That's what we're looking at today, a special panel with me. Let me introduce the gentleman right away. And I did ask right at the start why we didn't have a proper gender balance on the panel. I was told that it's not that the startup community doesn't have enough women, but perhaps, as always, the women are hard at work. Well, let me introduce them right away. There's Amit Mishra, country head, India at F6S. It's a startup community. Yes. And also an advisor. Varun Chawla, co-founder at 91 Springboard, a startup co-working space. Prashant Singh, who's a VP at Paytm, and Mayank Dhingra, co-founder at Beta Out, a marketing automation platform for e-commerce companies. Thanks all so much for taking our time to be with us today. Let me start by asking you, Varun, and while doing research on the panel, one thing that came about, and this is someone, I don't know how this is going to sound, but someone means this in a good way about you. They said Varun is a serial failure. He's now on his 6th venture. The good thing about him is he learns something every time he fails, and he loves to fail. Is that an overstatement? Is that romanticizing failure to a point where we don't need to? Because I know that we celebrate success, and we've been often told that, look, it's all well to celebrate success, but it's very important to also know that failure is part and parcel of the game, a bigger reality for many.
Exactly.
But when you say you love to fail, does your stomach not churn, or given that you're on the 6th venture, you're beyond that?
Right. So you don't start off with the idea that you're going to fail. You start off with the idea that you're going to create something awesome, but you accept the fact that failures might be along the way and embrace them and don't let it dishearten you. So I think that's the philosophy that I was really getting at. So as you set out on this route, I'm going to do something awesome, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to do something amazing that nobody's ever seen before. As long as you accept the fact that there will be hiccups along the way and you will learn from them and patiently wade it through.
Prashant, you've been an entrepreneur. You're sort of now working for a unicorn, a huge startup, but it's now, if I may say, a kind of a salary job for you. It's not your baby, even if you share the dream. How has the shift been? Has there been unlearning and learning? Did you have to prepare yourself into sort of leaving that dream aside and getting onto this boat now?
By and large, on net, this is a positive experience because inside a startup, you have a lot of idea, you're bursting with things which you can possibly do, but you are also resource constrained, and suddenly all those constraints have been removed. You're part of this company which is like on a, like that's a unicorn, this is on a traction curve which is like unprecedented, and you have resources to kind of go out and fulfill those goals. So that's been very liberating. But then, as it always happens, as a network theory, like you always kind of have n to the power 3, so node of communication also get increases. So you have to coordinate a lot of things. So there's a bit of a learning curve there. So basically,
but do you ever sort of find yourself stepping back and saying, "Gosh, if that had worked," or does that not happen? Have you managed to successfully put that behind you?
Not so far.
Not so far.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Mayank, there are lots of people who say that the problem in India culturally is that, you know, we are all about success. We are all about getting into top Indian colleges, 100% or nothing. Even 95 now doesn't get you there. So we're, you know, our banner headlines are always taken by the big success stories, men and women who make it. That we never look at the dark side, the real side that 99% of people have to go through for sure before they hit the big league, because not everyone hits the ground running. Yeah. Is that a problem, do you believe, in the startup space? That, you know, we're not sort of, unlike say the West, in America in particular, where it's absolutely cool to get laid off. It's okay to fail. Here it's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
I guess it's a big deal. Yes, you're right in that sense, but I'm not sure everybody sort of treats or feels it equally. So a lot of people might be taking it a lot too seriously, while for others it's part of the game. They understand that they have to deliver, they have to work hard, and in case they're not meeting the expectations of the employer or the startup, they might have to change course.
You've said that only 2 to 5% of startups are supposed to be super successful. That does not mean that everything else is a failure, but certain businesses will become lifestyle businesses as well. This happens across the globe. We're at a space where now every second or third person one speaks to has a great startup idea, wants to be the next big thing. But do you think we're prepared for what we're getting into, that our youngsters are prepared for what we're getting into? We are the third biggest startup community in the world.
No, I think the challenge basically is there is a lot of exposure which where we're talking about funding, right? And being in a startup is a cool, sexy term today. But the challenge is that we are not telling them how to do a startup, right? We never talk about finance management, right? Somebody who has not even managed his pocket money, you're giving a person 100 crores, right? That could be a humongous task for the poor kid, I would say. And the other things are the people management, something which we never talk about in colleges, right? I was just telling them that there is the government is coming up with a lot of these schemes where they will be teaching student entrepreneurs about project planning and everything else. People management is not there, right? So I think there are a lot of these skill sets, right, which need to be imbibed in some other fashion.
Which is an important point that you're making, because very often one is told that the right team is absolutely, very often is absolutely key. I mean, the right idea is one thing, the timing is another thing, money falls into place eventually, so they say. You guys would know much better. But I saw you nodding in agreement, Varun. If I were to ask you, what were the things that you believe if you knew earlier, you could have perhaps applied them in a better way?
So, a lot of people have asked me, and there's the cliched response that, I would have done this differently, I would have done that differently. But I think if I had done certain things differently, I wouldn't have had these learnings which have benefited me. I'm on my 6th startup. Were my first 4 startups successful? No. Was my 5th one a moderate success? Yes. Is my 6th one looking like an even better success? Yes. So all these failures were important because I learned off them. I imbibed
What's the biggest learning? What's the biggest lesson?
Getting the best folks on board, not just as your partners, but also people on your team. So this means being able to excite and entice the best talent, being able to give them the right compensation, and this is not just financial. Sometimes we get confused, it's just that. And today people value learning. So being a good mentor, a leader for these folks, especially younger ones, is truly important.
What about burnouts?
Burnouts for real.
Absolutely.
Just because
And they happen early on, because you're sort of putting in 25-hour working days, or you're sort of always there. Stress is crazy, from what we are told. It makes the journalist job seem really cushy, which was never the case, but you guys have managed to do that. But
yes, somehow that sort of happened. And but just by the fact that startups are trying to figure out their own paths as they sort of grow, that in itself means there's a lot of uncertainty. They have to always stay ahead of the curve. And to ensure that happens, people have to work hard. They have to keep constantly innovating and trying to figure out the feasibility of the business or the particular model of the business that you're working at. And just because you're competing with a lot of overfunded or established, dominant players, you have to work hard. You have to try to, find ways to distribute your product. It requires you to work hard, and there are people who work like 6 days or 6.5 days a week, crazy hours. But most of these people actually enjoy working. So if they don't have work on one day, they'll say, is there something else I can do? That's for real, especially for younger people,
And to add to that, essentially, what happens is that startup by definition is essentially you pack up and condense your 6 years of work life into 1 year so that you can get exponentially high return. So it comes as a part and parcel that you'll have to work that much hard. And like Mayank said, the kind of people who survive in this are the people who tend to enjoy the work.
So are we sort of not even, the messaging out there, is it still such that it's so cool, it's so aspirational, I want to set up the next Flipkart or Paytm or whatever be it that you want to do, and I want to be the next big, poster boy or girl of the startup space, but without knowing what all goes into it, because the glitzy headlines are all okay, but there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears that goes into it.
Right, and I think we are all to be blamed about it. I think, and media plays a very big role.
I was waiting for that.
Yes. Right, because I think the challenge is we are just talking about funding or the layers of which are or companies being shut down, right? nobody talks about the journey which Vijay took, right, or the journey which Varun took, right, or the things which I got when I was trying to do my own businesses, right. So these are the things which we need to tell in the public, right, and we need to be probably as entrepreneurs we need to be shameless, right, and these are things which we are ready to share.
Right.
Yeah.
Quickly.
To add to that, like our traditional definition of hard work is like the hard work you do for preparing for IIT, JEE and all, where everything is well structured, defined, the problem is defined, and you have to just go and crack the problem, right? In startup atmosphere, most of the time you are actually in process of defining the problem, and alongside you're working
Finding
hard.
a solution, right?
So that kind of stress and uncertainty we are not very equipped to handle.
Right. Has that been your experience as well? Because there are now increasingly people, the point being made earlier also that if last year was all about valuations, about the big guys, this year now slowly people are talking about money is becoming tighter. You're being asked to prove, you know, how you're going to grow and what is your plan for the road ahead. This money is not going to be flowing in, and as a result of which, there are more stories that one is now reading about depression and tension and stress at the workplace and burnouts and all of that.
So I think there's cycles. Money has always gone through cycles. I learned that at Goldman Sachs, that there's ups and downs. When there's the good times, you know, firms open the floodgates, hire people like crazy. Tough times, you fire left, right, and center. I think that happens in every industry. I think there's some screws being tightened even for startup funding, but I think the good guys will always get funded. So I think if we just put our heads down and say, hey, this is a real problem, this is something that I need, 5 of my friends need, and turns out 50 of their friends need, so this is real. You build a product and you find these 5 and these 50 friends are using this product, there's a good chance you'll get funded.